The passionate lovemaking in the bedroom finally came to an end 2 hours later. Soon there was the sound of water splashing on tiles coming from the shower. After resting for a few minutes, Noelle Swanson got out of bed with trembling legs as she picked up her clothes from the floor. Hendrix Freeman had been rougher than usual today, so she felt a little bewildered. She fumbled with the buttons of her pajamas several times but couldn't get them done up. Soon Hendrix came out of the shower. He was tall with strong, handsome features. He just showered, so he only had a towel wrapped around his waist at the moment. Droplets of water trickled down his abs. When he noticed that Noelle was still there, he frowned a little. Noelle didn't look at him. She kept her head down and continued to struggle with the buttons. "Sandra will be discharged from the hospital tomorrow," Hendrix suddenly said as he walked past her. "Go pick her up. I've already promised your mother that she can stay here for a while." Noelle's hands that were buttoning her pajamas froze. Then she turned to look at Hendrix, who was behind her. He was her husband of 2 years, Hendrix Freeman, the successor of Amity Group. The woman he mentioned was Noelle's adopted sister, Sandra Swanson. When Noelle was 5 years old, she went missing in an amusement park. She was separated from the Swanson family and was only brought back when she reached the age of 16. By then, her parents had another daughter, Sandra. Noelle's father, Craig Swanson, had explained to her solemnly about their decision to adopt another girl. During the time when Noelle went missing, her mother, Matilda Lyle, was often dazed and couldn't function normally. Out of desperation, Craig adopted a girl from an orphanage. When Noelle was finally found, their family was reunited. But life after the reunion wasn't as pleasant as one might have expected. Noelle had grown up in a rural farming village during those 10 years when she was gone. Sandra, on the other hand, had been raised by the Swansons. As a result, she mastered dance, painting, and playing the piano due to exceptional nurturing from a young age. More importantly, the Swanson family had a prearranged engagement agreement with the Freeman family. In other words, Hendrix's fiancée had always been Sandra before Noelle returned. Hendrix and Sandra were childhood sweethearts. But all of that was disrupted by Noelle's sudden return. As Noelle recalled the past, she became lost in thought. However, she quickly regained her composure and abandoned her battle with the buttons. She simply pulled her clothes together and said, "All right." With that, she got up and left the room. Her bedroom was at the end of the hallway. On their wedding night, Hendrix had told her he wasn't used to sharing a bed with someone. Noelle understood what he was insinuating immediately, so she hadn't bothered unpacking her things. Without a word, she went to the guest room at the end of the hall with her suitcase and stayed there. Noelle was very perceptive. Even when Hendrix hadn't even bothered to inform her in advance that Sandra would be staying with them, she wouldn't ask him any questions. After all, this was his house. Even if he decided to replace the lady of the house, no one would say a word, let alone a guest coming over to stay. As his wife, Noelle had no right to speak either. The next day, Noelle drove to the hospital. As she stood outside the hospital room, the first thing she heard was voices coming from inside. "So, is Mr. Freeman coming to pick you up today?" "I'm not sure," Sandra replied softly. "He's always so preoccupied with work. I doubt he'll come." "That's not for sure. You're special to him. If Noelle hadn't shown up back then, you would have become Mrs. Freeman. Everyone in our circle knows that Hendrix likes you." The person speaking was Sandra's good friend Ruth Upton. She was an heiress of a wealthy family. Ruth and Sandra had grown up together. She had always been the biggest supporter of Hendrix and Sandra's relationship. Now that Noelle had become Hendrix's wife instead, it came as no surprise that Ruth was unfriendly toward her. Even when she noticed Noelle standing at the door, she didn't feel the least bit embarrassed or uneasy about what she'd said. It was Sandra who greeted her first. "You're here, Noelle." Noelle nodded. "I'm here to take you home. Have you packed your things?" "Yes. I'm all set. Let's go," Sandra replied good-naturedly. Ruth couldn't help but ask, "Where's Mr. Freeman?" "Sandy is being discharged today. Isn't he coming to pick her up?" "He's gone to the office," Noelle replied. "Oh, he seems really busy. I wonder if he's too busy to come or if you didn't let him come," Ruth conjectured with disdain. Before Noelle could respond, Sandra interrupted softly, "Ruth, stop it." Ruth chuckled coldly. Why can't I talk about this? Did I hit the nail on the head? Noelle didn't argue with her. Instead, she unlocked her phone and scrolled to Hendrix's number in her contacts. Then she handed the phone to Ruth. What do you mean by this? Ruth asked. Noelle replied seriously. Aren't you curious whether I'm preventing him from coming? Call him and ask him yourself. You. Ruth was about to lose her temper, but Sandra hastily grabbed her hand and shook her head. She pleaded, Don't argue with Noelle. You're just too nice. Ruth gritted her teeth. That's why others climb over your head. Noelle didn't bother responding to Ruth's remarks. She grabbed Sandra's suitcase and walked ahead. As soon as she got into the car, her phone rang. It was Matilda calling. Did you pick up Sandy? There was a noticeable tension in Matilda's voice when she spoke to Noelle. Yes, Noelle replied. Is she all right? The doctor said her irregular eating habits were the cause. Your father and I are overseas and aren't back yet. After you bring her home, make sure you take good care of her, okay? Okay, Noelle answered calmly. Matilda seemed to realize her tone had been a bit harsh, and after a brief pause she added, You're her older sister after all. Noelle's grip on the steering wheel tightened. A swirl of emotions rose inside her, but she suppressed it and responded softly, I understand. Is there anything else? After a moment of silence, Matilda said, Give the phone to Sandy. All right. Noelle handed the phone to Sandra, who was sitting in the back seat. Hey, Mom, Sandra spoke to Matilda in a soft and sweet voice. It was the kind of girlish voice that a daughter used when speaking to her mother affectionately. The stark contrast with Noelle's cold and formal tone was apparent. Noelle didn't turn around to look. She simply fastened her seatbelt and started the car with a composed expression. You're here, Miss Sandra. As soon as Noelle's car stopped in front of the villa, Mabel Kirk, the housekeeper, rushed over. Her face lit up immediately when she saw Sandra. Mabel, it's been a long time. Sandra greeted her with a beaming smile. Yes, indeed. You've grown even more beautiful. I made your favorite barbecued ribs today. You must try them later. Mabel had already led Sandra inside as she spoke. Compared to Sandra, Noelle's presence as the lady of the house seemed far more negligible. Still, Noelle was used to this kind of life. She simply instructed the house helper to bring Sandra's suitcase to the guest room. Then she returned to her own room. She had just taken out her tablet when Sandra's voice sounded from the door. So this is where you live? Noelle whipped her head around. Sandra's gaze wandered around the room before she asked, Noelle, do you and Hendrix sleep in separate rooms? At 7 p.m., Hendrix returned to the villa right on time. Sandra happened to be in the living room when he returned. The moment she saw him, she walked over excitedly to greet him. You're back, Hendrix. Hendrix gave her a slight smile as he looked up at her. Noelle pursed her lips and stepped forward to take his coat. She said to him, Dinner is ready. I'm sorry, Hendrix. Am I encroaching on you and Noelle by staying here? Sandra asked quietly at the dinner table. She snuck a glance at Noelle before continuing. I told Mom I could stay home on my own, but she insists that she doesn't feel at ease if I'm alone at home. It's fine. Stay as long as you like. If you need anything, just ask, Hendrix replied. Really? I don't want to be too much trouble. It's no trouble at all. Miss Sandra, it's better that you're staying here, Mabel chimed in as she served the dishes. It's been a long time since this house has felt so lively. Upon hearing that, Noelle's hand that was holding the spoon froze midair. Nevertheless, Mabel wasn't wrong. Noelle was rather quiet and reserved, unlike Sandra, who could easily get everyone to like her. It wasn't just Mabel. Noelle had never heard Hendrix speak so much before. Noelle knew she was just taking up space by being there. So, she hastily finished the food on her plate and stood up. I'm done eating. So I'll head upstairs first. You all take your time and enjoy your food. Are you sure you've had enough, Noelle? You ate so little. Shall I accompany you upstairs? Sandra offered with concern. That's not necessary, Noelle replied, pulling her hand away from Sandra's grasp. It's fine. Enjoy your dinner. With that, she turned and walked upstairs. Just before leaving the dining room, she overheard Sandra asking cautiously, Hendrix, is Noelle upset? I guess I shouldn't have come here and disrupted your lives. There was a hint of grief and a slight choke in Sandra's voice when she said that. Noelle didn't want to hear anymore. She didn't care how Hendrix responded to Sandra, either. Back in her room, she opened her computer again. But even after she opened her work file, she couldn't seem to start on it. She didn't know how much time had passed before a message popped up on her phone. It was from Hendrix and there were only 2 words. Come over. Noelle glanced at the message but chose to ignore it. Hendrix didn't send a second message. She stared at the uncolored panels on her screen for a while longer. After some time, she turned off her computer and left the room. This was the reason Hendrix never needed to send a second message. He knew she would eventually go to him. When Noelle arrived at the master bedroom, Hendrix had just stepped out of the bathroom. The first thing he noticed was that she hadn't even bothered to change out of the clothes she'd been wearing earlier. He frowned slightly but didn't dwell on it. He reached out and grabbed her hand, pulling her into the bathroom forcefully. Warm water cascaded down onto Noelle from the shower head, drenching her hair and body in an instant. The discomfort from the wet clothes sticking to her skin made her wince. Just as she was about to push Hendrix away, he grabbed the back of her head and kissed her. Their lips and tongues intertwined. Hendrix was assertive and domineering, so were his kisses. Even after 2 years, Noelle still hadn't fully adjusted to it. Being in the bathroom with him only intensified her sense of suffocation. Her legs weakened, and her whole body slumped against Hendrix's. At that moment, they both heard a feminine voice from outside the door. Hendrix, are you in there? Noelle's body stiffened. Her eyes flew open, and she tried to push Hendrix away with all her strength. However, Hendrix acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He gripped her wrists effortlessly and pressed her against the wall. His movements were as forceful as ever. Noelle wanted to cry out, but she quickly remembered that Sandra was right outside. She bit her tongue and swallowed the helpless whimper that was about to escape her lips just in time. The sound of the water from the shower continued. With the door between them, Sandra seemed to be unaware of what was happening inside. She called out again, Hendrix. Noelle turned her head to look at Hendrix. Her face was flushed, possibly due to anger or some other intense emotion. Her eyes were opened wide as she glared at Hendrix. In contrast to her usual quiet and withdrawn demeanor, she looked far more animated at that moment. Her expression caused Hendrix's movements to become bolder. It was almost as if he were venting. Their bodies moved in perfect sync. Soon Noelle reached a state of absolute ecstasy. Sandra was still speaking outside the door, but Noelle couldn't make out a single word she was saying. When Hendrix pressed her down again, she couldn't hold back and let out a soft moan. Right away, the person outside the bathroom door fell silent. Upon realizing this, Noelle clenched her hands tightly. Just then, Hendrix bent down and picked her up. With his body lowered, his shoulder came close to her mouth. Without hesitation, she bit down. Noelle's heart was filled with frustration and resentment. But despite her grievances, she didn't bite hard. After a gentle bite, she let go and looked up. Hendrix's deep and intent gaze was fixed on her. Noelle didn't say anything but turned her head to avoid his stare. But in the next second, Hendrix grabbed her chin and kissed her again. The night passed quickly. Noelle couldn't remember how she made it back to her room. As soon as she collapsed onto the bed, she fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, it was Mabel who came to remind Noelle that she should be heading back to Freeman Manor that day. Noelle jolted awake immediately. Mabel continued. Miss Sandra was up early and even made breakfast for Mr. Freeman. There was a distinct note of displeasure in her voice. Noelle noticed it but chose not to make a fuss about it. She merely grunted in acknowledgement and got out of bed. Are you getting ready to go to Freeman Manor? Sandra approached with a smile as soon as Noelle came downstairs. Shall I go with you? Grandma Ophelia called me a couple of days ago and asked me to visit her when I had the time. Okay, Noelle replied readily. To be more accurate, she responded indifferently because it didn't really matter to her. Sandra raised an eyebrow in mild surprise, but then her smile deepened. Please wait for me. I made Grandma Ophelia's favorite crab cakes. They'll be ready soon. Noelle agreed nonchalantly as usual. But as Sandra headed back into the kitchen, a thought suddenly crossed Noelle's mind. Sandra was fully capable of making meals, as well as desserts and cakes. Would she be unable to take care of herself? It was something Matilda hadn't considered, and Hendrix didn't seem to have thought of it either. But wasn't he supposed to be the smart one? Perhaps he had realized it, but he simply went along with it. Noelle pushed those thoughts aside and turned to look out the window. The sky was gray and overcast. It looked like it was about to rain.